Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing City of Spies from Amiibo Games. And City of Spies is it's a spy game, but it's kind of this weird, interesting hybrid of sort of worker placement, but not really with traditional workers so much as with the spies you're going to be acquiring throughout the game. You see, you start the game with 6 spies, and ultimately the goal is to get the most points, and the most points is going to be a combination of a few different factors. It's going to be fulfilling certain goals of the types of spies you have at the end of the game. It's going to be the actual point values on the bottom of each spy. Every spy, the ones you start with and the ones you're going to gather throughout the game, will have point values on them that you're going to try to be going for, and then every additional spy past 6, which you're going to have to discard down to, will be worth a point as well. So as you get more spies, you can only ever hold on to 6 round to round across 4 rounds, but each spy you discard is still worth a point, so more is better, but better is honestly better. I'll explain that as we keep going. But the basic idea, the basic gameplay, now that we know the scoring, how the structure works, the basic scoring is each round you're going to set up the various map tiles over here, randomly orienting them, putting them out so that you have a bit of a structure. You see, the first spy you place every single round has to come from the edge of the board. You cannot place in the center unless you have adjacency. So maybe I go ahead and I grab one of my spies over here, and I'll place this spy down over here. It's a great spot for the spy. Excellent, no problem. I'll take one of my little gun markers, mark that it's my spy, and then next turn, when it's my turn again, I can now go here, but meanwhile, no one else can. Meanwhile, another player will go ahead and grab their spy. We'll take our little green card over here, and we'll put a spy out as well, but we're actually going to go ahead and aim for that spot over there. That's actually a terrible spy choice over there. I don't want to choose a bad spy choice. Let's go ahead and place this one down over here, and we'll go ahead and put a marker down. Now what you're doing is, as you place these spies down, you're going to pay attention to the various zones on the board. You see the 1 zone, it breaks all ties, which is why it's advantageous there, but the 2s and the 3s have powers that will often let you look at other cards. So for example, this 2 over here, had I gone there second, I would have been able to look at this card over here. That symbol means you can look at a card on this tile. This symbol means you can look at a card on an adjacent tile or on this tile. And then there's one tile that gives you, this one over here, lets you look on a card at any single tile. So the lower you go, you don't have to worry so much about, the lower you go in terms of the sequencing, you won't break ties, but you will get the ability of the spot to a degree. You're going to keep placing spies down on the board, depending on the player count, often 3 to 4 spies, until eventually you hit your 3 or 4 spies, at which point you'll resolve the locations. You're going to resolve the locations from the lowest number, the 0 over here, then the 1, then the 5, 7, 8, 9. That will obviously be variable depending on the tiles that are in play. Now every tile has their own ability on them, so for instance this location over here has 5 spots instead of 4 over there. It has an extra spot to put a spy down. This location has no guns. Different abilities. This location, whoever comes in the last over here, is going to lose their spy permanently, so taking away a minimum of a point, but perhaps more as well. Different things like that on the board. This one over here has that all sides are considered to be open, so you actually could place your first one over there. Different abilities from different zones on the board. But then past that, you're going to start with that 0, which there's no spies here, so let's go ahead and flip this over, showing you how something would play out. Let's resolve this like so over here and see how this would work. So over here, this character has the romance ability. Now that means that they can pull somebody in from an adjacent location. So for example, let's pretend that we have this spy over here, and let's go ahead and put, let's put this spy over here like so. So we have some other spies in this location. This character, they flip over, and they see you have a choice over here. She can't do much about this character over here because that character is currently going to win. Right now we have a strength of 2 versus a strength of 1. As of right now, this person would win, but we do have the romance ability. So we could either pull our own person in order to help us win, and let's see how we're doing there. Well, that wouldn't help us. You see, we have a 1 over here. So that 1 would actually not help us win because it would be a total strength of 2 versus a strength of 2, and because they are higher up that chart there, they're in the first spot, they would break all ties. So knowing that I can't win, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to try to pull this character over, so that instead of winning, since I can't win anyway, hopefully I stop this person from winning and over here. So I'm going to go ahead and use romance to pull that person over. That's what romance does. It lets you pull an adjacent spy into your location, assuming there's a free spot. We're going to flip them over, and then when you have a spy pulled into a zone, they do not get to use their abilities, which means she can't even use her gun to do anything, but that's great because she would have used her gun over here. Once we move to over here, we move from 1, the next one up is 5, we go ahead and flip this, and this character simply would have just, died. Because of the fact that this one activates first, this 1 activates before 2, activates before 3, even though this ability over here allows me to place a shield, preventing me from abilities, because the order activation matters, what would have happened here is had this character been over here, she would have activated her gun, shot this character, that character would be gone, that spy would be gone, and now she'd win because she's the last person standing. Since we pulled her away, since since we used our romance over there to pull her away, we get to actually, well, move her. We lose this zone. That green player will get that spy, but we'll go ahead and pull this spy. That is a basic sequence of activation. You have these 4 primary abilities before we get to the expansion. The abilities are assassination, shooting someone with your weapon, romance, pulling someone over to you. It's not called romance, it's called something else. Seduction. Then we have an ability that will let us, this one over here, lets us look at the reward, swapping the reward card with another spy from the thing and choosing which one's better for us, or if we know we're losing, choosing which one's worse for our opponent. And then we have the diplomat over here, which would go ahead and shield our agents from seduction, as well as from assassination. And it's that interplay of abilities that matters. Now, especially in this case, because of the fact, over here I happened to pull a random person in because I knew I couldn't help myself, so I may as well pull someone else in. At the same time, very often, because of the abilities on different locations, because of the fact that you can often look at adjacent locations, over here, this exact thing might have been slightly different. I may have gone over here to specifically look at that character first, knowing full well what I was doing as I pulled her into the zone. And so that's basically City of Spies. What you're doing is you have a set of starting spies, you place them down to different zones, being mindful of the ability that you're placing down, being mindful of the spy you're trying to gather, being mindful of your abilities that you currently have, the abilities the opponents have, the order of activation of the tiles, because that matters a lot. Going from 0 to 1 to 5, knowing the way the tiles will activate matters hugely, and then trying to capitalize on all of that to ultimately gather the best spies that give you the points you want, give you the requirements for these objectives that you want, and at the end of 4 rounds, try to come out the winner of City of Spies. That's basically how you play the game, which brings us to the review part of things. Now, there's an expansion in here. This is the Super Box. I'm just primarily covering the base game over here. There are some expansion tiles mixed in, but the expansion will also add some other abilities, things like that. But it also adds some component upgrades, like things like this over here. These tiles are fantastic for holding your spies fairly well, you know, doing what it needs to do. It has upgraded tokens in terms of these gun tokens and shield tokens instead of the tokens that otherwise come with the base game. But you can get the base game, the expansion, the Super Box, all that stuff. So that's what we have over here, which brings us to the review part of things, covering the general, well, game. Starting with ease of play. Rulebook is fairly easy to go through. Now, it's not immediately intuitive, and I've been playing this game for years, so it's hard to exactly recall how hard it was to learn when I learned it, because it's been in my collection for quite some time. But I don't remember it being particularly difficult, but I would say the part that that players tend to struggle with is not necessarily the rules in terms of the pure rules of what you have to do, but rather the sequencing of actions and how those things will play out. Understanding the rules is not necessarily the hardest, but then suddenly seeing it in play and understanding, oh, you pulled me away with your seduction, or oh, you shot me there. Like, I didn't think that sequence would play out. It's more the sequencing that I find to be a barrier as opposed to rules in and of themselves. Rules over here are pretty simple. You have a few abilities of the various tiles, but the core actual characters, the spies themselves, only have a few abilities you have to remember. They do come with this handy dandy little player aid over here. Mine's in Portuguese, but I'll fix that at some point. But they do come with a player aid, and to be clear, my copy has a Portuguese one. Your copy should come with an English one. They come with excellent player aids that cover all the abilities, cover all the locations that you need, so everything handily dandily printed right over there. But overall, game is pretty easy to learn. It's the sequencing that I find to be an issue. As far as game length, I find this game comes in usually at around, I want to say around 45 minutes to an hour for a game. It depends on the player count, depends on how fast players are taking their turns, how much they're overthinking versus underthinking. I have had games that hit the 2-hour mark. That is usually the rarity. I would say usually it's around the hour mark. Some games can be fast, some games can be slow, but somewhere around the hour mark. And table space is basically what you see here. Other players only add, well, this much table space, not a lot going on. Fairly large amount of game for the small amount of space it takes up. As far as player count, this is a 2 to 4 player game. I've only played it at 3 and 4 players. I don't believe I've played it at 2. Again, I've had it in my collection for a while, so I'm not certain. But I don't think I've ever played this at 2. It's not the kind of game that I think of as a 2-player game. It's the interaction between other players. It's the interaction between messing with others, between having them put things down and mess with you. That is the joy of the game. And something we didn't even talk about is the fact that some locations, whenever you see top secret, that means the reward is going face down. And the reverse is true as well. Top secret, most locations on the board, you place your spies face down. Some of them go face up. And so trying to see the pattern that the game provides with you, usually I think this is the type of game that while I've played it at 3 and 4, and I have not played it at 2, I don't imagine it plays as well at 2, but I'm projecting my own opinion without having actually played at 2. Between 3 and 4, 3 is definitely my favorite because at 3 players, you place that extra spy on the board. At 4 players, you're only placing 3 spies. At 3 players, you're placing 4 spies. And that extra spy allows so much extra manipulation because of the interchange of the abilities. Having 1 extra spy feels like you're doing twice as much. So 3 players, definitely my preferred player count. That said, I definitely enjoy it at 4 players as well. As far as interaction between players, there's a ton of interaction in this game. The entire thing is thinking through what other players are doing and how they're going to interact and what moves they're going to take next. So interaction in City of Spies is absolutely huge. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I just said, the whole game of City of Spies is a mind game. It's a game of thinking through your actions, thinking through your opponent's actions, and trying to see what can lock you in the win. What action can I take that is anticipating your move? You're probably going to go ahead and play an assassin over there. Your assassin will kill me, so I'll inherently go ahead and use seduction in an adjacent location, but you see that coming, so you place a diplomat in another adjacent location that allows you to protect your assassin before my seduction activates, and that whole thing is going on, this whole mind game, and a little bit of it's a mind game, but then sometimes you can give up that first player hit over there in order to take an action that will let you look at the adjacent location, because that will give me a little bit of information about how things are going. Because I'm going lower down in one zone, I might have less of a chance of winning there, but I'll know more about what you're doing in the zone over, which can allow me to prepare properly for that. Meanwhile, because of the interplay of players, while you're all doing this and while you're all fighting, everyone's trying to slip one in over the other player. The whole thing is a fun little mind game that I'll kill you here, you'll pull me in there, I'll be left standing there, and it works so ridiculously well. It's just a bunch of abilities and trying to figure out how to capitalize on those abilities. And placement matters so much in this game. The way you place your spies, where you place your spies, it means that every round is a new puzzle. Every round that you place out and rotate new tiles and put them into play, it means you're dealing with a new scenario, effectively. A new way of, well, this spot's going to do that spot's going to do this is currently rotated that way, center zones are more powerful here, this zone lets me come in from the edge. A ton to think of as the placement of every single spy in every single location is so impactful in this game. And the fact that you can only keep your 6 best spies effectively means a few different things. First of all, it almost operates as a catch-up mechanic. A player who's winning 3 spies in a single round and I'm winning 1 spy, that doesn't actually mean that you win the game because you can't keep all the perks of all your spies. Winning too much or too often means you have better selection and you are more likely to win, but it doesn't feel like the gap widens that much. I can have a round where I win nothing, you win 3 spies, but we're both only keeping 6 anyways, so as long as I win 1 spy that's good, that works for me, we may end up in the same spot. And so that action, again, operates both as a catch-up mechanic, as well as a degree of trying to give players an objective to focus on. As I said earlier in the thing, this particular spy over here, who's going to fulfill 3 different objectives, that's insane. That's going to make her hotly contested as far as the players picking up a new double agent or whatever they're doing over there. And so you're trying to think through, do I try to win 2 spies over here, or do I try to focus over here where other players are going? And I love that action. I love that aspect of only being able to keep 6 different things. And the different abilities. The abilities all intermesh as far as the ways they operate. Pulling somebody into, capitalizing the ability, protecting your own spies, sometimes protecting enemy spies because you don't want something to play out a different way. More than once I've seen a diplomat used to protect an opponent because you don't want the other opponent winning, and that will give you the edge you need to win either the zone you're in or just to prevent someone who's already winning getting further ahead. There's a lot going on to manipulate and take advantage of here. As far as things I don't like, there's really one thing I don't like of City Spies. You can argue that there's a lack of variation to a degree. The puzzle changes every single round, there's a lot going on, but the core idea of what you're doing is similar, but that's not really necessarily my issue. The puzzle feels variable enough in and of itself, and the interplay between other players feels variable enough that I don't really mind that much. But what I would say is this particular tile that I made sure to set up for this teach over here, for this review, this particular tile, and maybe I'm wrong, by the way. If I'm wrong with this, if somebody knows something that I don't, by all means, please let me know. This tile feels a bit broken. You see, this church, and this is an expansion tile, this church over here, that's the otherwise 1 tile, specifically has the ability that you can't utilize guns in that location, which means it's impactful because the person who goes here first, they can't just place a gun person to then shoot the person who goes there next, because if you have a location where you can put your gun person into the 1 spot, put an assassin into the 1 spot, that would guarantee you a kill. And so they cleverly said, hey, no assassins at the church. That works. We're all good to go now. Except for the fact that in the expansion, they then introduced this tile. Also, the church is not guaranteed to come out every single round, so that could be a problem there. But this particular tile has an ability that you get to put down a character over here, like so. I can put a character down, face up, so everyone will see what's happening, but then I can also rotate the tile. So I can put down a character, rotate them so I now have access to the middle in 2 different zones, and effectively anyone else who goes here, I'm guaranteeing the fact that I get a free kill in. This particular tile tends to reward the first player of that round a lot. Now, first player does rotate, but if this tile's in play when the first player wins, generally we found that this tile is almost a guaranteed win. Now, other players can jump in. You can get 2 players in here who are willing to double up and team up against her, but that requires someone sacrificing themselves for the other player to have an edge. So this tile hasn't bothered us in terms of our overall enjoyment and affecting the game and whatnot, but it does feel like it's a gimme to the first player of the game. As far as, and again, let me know if I'm misunderstanding something, because this one has always been a little point of contention in our game group. We still play with it, we still like it, but it's that small little, okay, you got a free tile over there. In any case, moving on to things what I can see others not liking, and there's a few more things in that category. First of all, that whole fun of the game in terms of the screwage, in terms of messing with other players, in terms of that whole mind game you're playing, while that's a pro for me, that might be something that turns this game off for others. The whole thing is a mind game of trying to figure out how you can screw others, and inherently, if you can mess with others, they can mess with you too. There certainly are rounds where someone will walk into a round and walk away with nothing. Now, for me, that doesn't stop my enjoyment of the game. If anything, I appreciate your clever play just as much as I appreciate mine. Maybe a little less, but almost as much as I appreciate mine. But other players, in terms of messing with you, in terms of screwing up your moves, that can be a factor and that can affect your enjoyment of the game. And the abilities can take a game or two. Like I said already, the abilities can take a game or two in terms of getting other players to fully understand or comprehend the sequencing, the flow of the game. And that can be a factor. So you want to be mindful of that other players, you almost want to play a sample round. I would say I would highly encourage players to play a full sample round, just 1 round out of 4, before you actually dive into a full game, because it will give the players who are new to the game a chance to actually understand the sequencing, not from a rule stance, but from an actual living and feeling the sequencing and understanding how things will play out. As far as final thoughts on City of Spies, and City of Spies, Estoril, they took... I'm just realizing this now, because this game to me is always City of Spies, Estoril, but they took City of Spies off this box, and it's just Estoril 1942. In any case, so, as far as final thoughts for this game, I have had this game in my collection for a long time, and for good reason. I upgraded to the Super Box roughly a year ago, haven't looked back. This game is such a mind game. It's so enjoyable. It has stuck around for a long time, and everyone in my game group thoroughly enjoys this kind of gameplay, this kind of screwage, this kind of thinkiness of trying to figure out how to mess with others or try to get yourself out of a tough spot. There's so much challenge and puzzle in a tiny amount of rules and a tiny amount of abilities. The core game has 4 abilities. That's all there is. There's not a lot going on, but those 4 abilities mesh so well with everything else that this is such a interesting experience that works ridiculously well as far as giving you a puzzle to solve, as far as giving you moments of highs, of messing with others, of giving you that, oh my gosh, I can't believe you got one over me. This one is a 4.5 out of 5 for me. It's a ridiculously good experience, and it plays so well. I mean, it plays in an hour. It plays, most of the time, we can get a gameplay done in an hour, and the amount of game we have in that hour, for the amount of table space, for the amount of rules, it is such a good package wrapped up here that I can't recommend City of Spies enough. As far as other game recommendations, if you're looking for them, first of all, Battle for Rokugan is going to be a game that has a similar degree of general feeling to it. It has that aspect of placing down tiles, trying to anticipate what other players are going to do and how they're going to mess with you. And then additionally, Coup, if you're looking for just the general thinkiness in a spy game as well, without the full board aspect of it, Coup is a much shorter experience that will give you a degree of bluffing and doublethink as well in a very different package. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. This is City of Spies, Estoril 1942, and as always, have a good one.